When I visit students who are in music school today, I hear the same question over and over again. Do we really need to learn the old-timey jazz standards? When is this ever going to be practical? And so, in this video, I want to explore this question. Are they right? Are these old jazz standards just relics of history? Or are there really benefits to studying them today? When I was finishing up high school, I was a pretty serious piano player, but I wasn't really serious about playing great music. But all of that changed when my high school orchestra director gave me an offer. She had offered me the chance to perform the first movement from the Grieg Piano Concerto in A minor at my final concert. This was the moment that I knew for sure that I wanted to pursue music in college, and so I enrolled in the University of Toledo. Now, Toledo is not exactly known for their music program, but I really loved the faculty that I met there when I toured. I was starting to enter my serious phase, where I was learning Beethoven sonatas. I learned how to play Pictures at an Exhibition, the Mussorgsky piano solo, all the classics. While Toledo's a pretty big state school here in Ohio, the music department is very small. And so the director asked if I would play piano in the jazz band, and once I agreed, he gave me a folder of all this music I had to learn. Now, I was a serious piano student. I was studying serious classical music. This pop jazz stuff, this is all just for fun. So that folder the director gave me sat in my backpack for days without me even opening it. And the night before the first rehearsal, I opened it up and I was pretty shocked. Where are all the notes? These are just chord charts and they have some rhythm cues on it, but where's the music? Now, of course, I knew how to play all these fundamental chords, but the chords on these charts looked more like Wi-Fi passwords than they did the chords that I was familiar with. After that first jazz band rehearsal, the band director walked over to me.
Start counting.
I had a pit in my stomach, because I knew that I wasn't prepared for this. I knew that I hadn't kept up. That director believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself, and he gave me a couple of opportunities that day. The first thing he did was he fired me from playing the piano. He assigned me over to the trombone section instead. I was pretty deflated and embarrassed, to be honest with you. But I think he recognized my discouragement in me, and he invited me to schedule some time for his private office hours, where he was going to show me some jazz voicings and show me how to do some basic comping rhythms that I could practice. Now, I remember this like it was yesterday. He was showing me 4-note voicings. It had the 3 and the 7 in my left hand and the 9 and the 13 in my right hand. And he showed me that there were 2 different inversions that I needed to learn how to play. By the next semester, I had learned these chords well enough that I was able to go back to playing the piano in the jazz band. I did not consider myself a jazz player at all at this point. I had to actually write in all the voicings on the sheets, but I was holding my own enough to get by. This director and I had developed quite a bond through this experience, but he had announced that he was going to be leaving the school the next year, and honestly, I was starting to feel some disappointment in the classical lessons that I was getting there. I wanted to study that more seriously, so I decided to switch to a conservatory, and I moved back home to Cleveland. I ended up transferring to Cleveland State University, and I was studying privately at the Cleveland Institute of Music Conservatory with a renowned pianist who specialized in Chopin's music. And for the first year there, I studied Chopin preludes and nocturnes, and at one point I could even play a few of the infamously difficult etudes. But my practice room at CSU was next to the jazz professor's office. I could hear the jam sessions that happened on the other side of that wall. At first I found them quite distracting, all these weird sounding chords coming through the wall. But as time went on, I became more and more fascinated by the sounds I was hearing. Now, I was still committed to playing classical music, but I kept hearing these amazing jazz sessions happening on the other side of the wall. And over time, the more that I heard this music, the more that I started to rethink whether or not I was playing the music that I really loved. I eventually got the courage to ask that professor some questions about what I was hearing through the wall. I was initially pretty hesitant about this. I wasn't in his program, I didn't know him, I didn't have any classes that he was teaching. But my curiosity got the better of me, I guess, and one day when his door was open, I introduced myself. Now, I noticed pretty quickly that this professor would hire his friends to come play piano with his jazz group. They didn't use the pianists that were, faculty at the school. And I asked him why he didn't just have the other piano professors play. But he said, "Those classical teachers, they can't swing worth a damn." He went on to tell me that being a jazz pianist was kind of a unique specialty and that it required a different approach to learn. Now, this comment set me back a little bit. Was I just another one of those serious piano students, right, who couldn't play the kinds of music that was so popular on the radio? Was I so stuck up with classical music that I couldn't swing worth a damn either? He introduced me to some of his jazz piano students, and through hanging out with them, I became more and more interested in the music that they were listening to. This is music like Chick Corea, Bill Evans, Errol Garner, Oscar Peterson, the greats. Now, to be honest with you, I felt pretty conflicted about this at first. This music was fun, right? Was it too fun? I was a serious musician here for serious music, but this music was fun. And after immersing myself deeper into this new jazz world that I was discovering, I realized that these people were just as serious about their art as I was about classical music. In fact, in many ways, I think that their music was more of an exciting challenge for me, and that was much more exciting for me to chase than it was to learn the next Beethoven sonata. Now, I felt this wave of fear come over me. I realized in this moment that I was probably not cut out to be a touring concert pianist for the rest of my life. And so that meant I was going to be relegated to teaching third graders how to play the recorder. And I mean no disrespect to all of my friends who were elementary school music teachers. You guys, you're doing God's work, but this was not the life that I wanted. This is not what I signed up for. This is not what I asked my dad to pay for when I went to college. At this point, all I wanted to do was be the best jazz player that I could, and I wanted to get out and perform. But frankly, all of this was too little too late. I was heading into my fourth year of school. I had already switched schools once. Changing direction was going to be way too difficult at this point. I thought my professional journey in music was over, and so I shifted all my attention to a career in software instead. But the jazz bug would just not let go of me. With my career now heading in another direction, jazz became my hobby, and the pressure was off. After work, I could come home and I could just play the music that I loved, and I didn't have to be concerned about how I was going to make any money doing it. Now, I thought this was just something I could practice casually whenever I had extra time at the end of the day, but jazz had different plans for me. I became completely obsessed with jazz theory. I was transcribing recordings, and I had this intense drive to try and play any of these transcriptions myself. I bought every book that I could find, and I took lessons from local jazz teachers. But as much as I enjoyed playing, I was also growing frustrated. These books that I learned, they were full of all these old-timey songs like All of Me. And it was also teaching me all these old-timey techniques like stride left hand. And I was starting to wonder if this was what jazz was really all about, or was I missing something? And so I went to my teachers and I was complaining that this wasn't what I wanted to play. I would show them the recordings of my favorite bands and said, this is the sound that I want to get. But they just kept telling me to keep going, to trust the process. It hit me particularly hard one Christmas when I went down to visit my grandparents with my family. My grandparents, let's just say, they had a routine. Every night, they would watch Lawrence Welk reruns on PBS. And up would come some guy in a tuxedo with the biggest bow tie I have ever seen. He had shiny pomade in his hair and he was singing Mac the Knife. And this was a tune that I knew well, right, from my books and my lessons. And so I kind of rolled my eyes because now I realized I am learning how to play my grandparents' music. I was 20 some years old. This was not the music that I wanted to be playing. Little did I know that the thing that I was avoiding, learning all of these old-timey jazz standards, was actually the missing link that was going to help me find the sound that I wanted. And so I eventually gave in. They kept telling me to trust the process. Fine, I'll trust the process. So I spent my evenings after work learning how to play as much of the real book as I could. And once I really dedicated myself to this process, my skills started to improve. I started to break through the plateau that I had encountered before. And eventually, I was able to build this thing called Jazz Library, which is why I'm here talking to you on YouTube, and I could teach jazz full time. And as a result of these videos that I put up, I've had the chance to go travel and do workshops at schools and universities. And many of the students that I meet in those workshops are now asking me the same question that I used to ask my professors. Why do I have to learn these old-timey jazz standards? Are these things still relevant? These students gather in the lobby of the music building and they hang out together and listen to their favorite music like Snarky Puppy and Wolfpack. They watch clips of people on YouTube and Instagram, and to be honest, I see myself when I look at them. I remember doing the same things, listening to my favorite music and wondering why anybody would care about Louis Armstrong ever again. To them, these old-time standards felt like ancient history, something that they were forced to learn about in their music history class, but not something that they ever really connected with. And I so understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, I know that they're wrong. And so I play them two recordings. The first one is an old song from 1923 called Just Gone by Joe King Alpert. And the second song that I play them is a song that they've all heard. It's What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong from 1966. What a wonderful. See, these two different songs are roughly 45 years apart. The feel, the colors, the instrumentation, all of it is different. What a Wonderful World is fresh and modern and sophisticated, at least in comparison to the 1923 tune. It was even considered a pop song at its time. But these two recordings have something really important in common, and that is that they both feature Louis Armstrong. There is a straight line that connects these two moments in history. Now, What a Wonderful World is a beautiful song, but it's not just a beautiful song. It's the result of decades of innovation, of Lewis and his contemporaries that were all playing and experimenting and evolving their sounds over the years. And where Louis Armstrong left off, we have younger musicians like Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea that took over, and they carried the torch from there into the modern day today, where we have people like Tigran Hamaisen and Brett Mehldau that are continuing to evolve that music even further. But what's fascinating to me is just how far back these threads go. There is this genealogy of our Western music that you can trace back through different eras. You can go from hard bop, back to bebop, back to swing, back to stride, to ragtime. You could keep going back to the Romantic period with Chopin, all the way back until you get to Gregorian monks chanting in their monastery. Much like our spoken language and dialects have changed over the years, so has the jazz language. It would be very difficult for us to appreciate and understand hard bop without first understanding and appreciating where it came from, bebop. All of this is to say that the music of the past is not an obstacle. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's literally our path forward. A couple of years ago, my friend and my colleague Jeremy Siskind was here in Cleveland, and he was giving a masterclass at my old university. I kind of Obi-Wan'd my way into that masterclass to observe, and he opened up the session by playing an old standard, Take the A Train. Now, after he played it himself for a few minutes, he welcomed each of the students to come join him at the piano sitting next to him and take turns soloing. This experience was so exciting, so interactive, probably terrifying for them. But these students were so inspired by it that they hung on to every word that Jeremy had to say for the rest of the workshop. See, these are the experiences that grow musicians more than any other. There's so much academic knowledge that comes from classrooms and books and videos, but it's experiences like this where you get to play with other musicians that motivate and inspire them. We need jam sessions. These students were learning firsthand just how important it was to have these standards so that when these jam sessions were called that they could really hang. As far as I know, Jeremy didn't send out a lead sheet ahead of time. He just sat down and started playing. And because these students had spent time with the standards before, they were able to jump in and play alongside him. That spontaneity, the collaboration, and the sensitivity to the artistry that was going on in the room around you in real time, that is the essence of jazz. You can't learn that from a book. You can't learn that from a classroom. The only way you can learn it is to sit down and play the standards and attend jam sessions with other musicians. Simply put, the old-timey jazz standards, they are our playbook. Could we learn how to play jazz without them? Probably. I'm sure somebody has. If you were dedicated enough, I guess. But why? Like, the standards give us such an efficient and effective way to learn the jazz language. So do we still need jazz standards? Abso-freaking-lutely. Without them, we lose the very language that ties together generations of musicians. I think of them more as having withstood the test of time than they are relics of history. They are the gateway for us to create this music for yourself.